Welcome to Greenhouse Management. One of the things we're going to talk about is how to build a greenhouse, where to put a greenhouse, how to run a greenhouse, how to do a greenhouse business. To start with, I have found a couple little YouTube videos I'd like to show. So one of the things that I'd like you to think about is, what is a greenhouse? I live in a greenhouse. House painted green. A greenhouse for this class, though, is typically a structure covered with a transparent material that admits natural light for plant growth and is typically heated. In the United States, a greenhouse is heated. In Europe, a greenhouse is not heated. They're called a glass house. So the terminology gets a little bit skewed. We'll talk about greenhouses in this country that have both glass roofs, polycarbonate roofs, acrylic roofs, polyethylene roof, heated, not heated, they're all the same. Terminology doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me. Dr. Doug Bailey, who's now the department head at the horticulture program at University of Georgia, put together this little slide set years ago when he taught greenhouse management in North Carolina, and I've used it for a long time, talking about the history of where greenhouses came from. If you look back into the old writing, Columella first described the use of sheets of mica to cover transplants. Columella was actually a Roman soldier during the Roman Empire. And he did a lot of writing where they would use, I call them a cloche. Anybody speak French? Cloche means bell jar, okay? So when you hear cloche, they're talking about just little covers for transplants. And mica is actually a mineral glass. Anybody hike up in the foothills around Horsetooth? You've seen outcroppings of sheets of mica. Actually, old stoves, the glass front on old stoves, old wood-burning stoves, is typically mica. Grew into forcing boxes for outdoor producers to extend season. Greenhouses were first started out as greenhouse or season extension devices, and they grew into what we often call an orangery. Denver Botanical Garden, one of their greenhouses is called an orangery. Orangery is an old term, and it goes back to the European cultures where people had lots of money and they would bring citrus trees in and out so it could have citrus fruit year-round. And they're called orangeries. And this is a picture of an orangery somewhere in France. The buildings were typically on a courtyard area. Some of the most famous orangeries in the United States is Longwood Gardens. Anybody been to Longwood Gardens? Okay. Or like was said, Denver Botanical Garden has a new orangery there, which is well worth the time to visit. Denver Botanical Gardens, there's something for somebody to visit every day of the year. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. And right now we're probably at the tail end of their orchid display. One of the first greenhouses built in the United States were typically what we call a lean-to structure. A lean-to greenhouse is basically a greenhouse where up against a building with solid structure on one side, extending up to the eave. Other greenhouses, this is a greenhouse from a southern plantation where we have sliding panels to open and close them, large window panes, large window frames in the greenhouse. You can go see an example of building a greenhouse from window panes at Resource Lumberyard. Does anybody know where Resource Lumberyard is? It's a recycled lumber yard on the north side of town. I like to take stuff there from my building projects at home, but my wife doesn't like me to go there because I usually bring home more than I took because they got all kinds of cool stuff. But you can go get window frames and build a greenhouse like that if you want. But this is a greenhouse from a plantation where they probably grew transplants of tobacco and sweet potatoes. This is a picture of one of the first greenhouses built in Chicago, where they just took the rafters out of a greenhouse. A lot of greenhouses are basically poultry barns, old poultry sheds where they just took the roof off and put clear cover on it. That's all a greenhouse really is a pole barn with a clear roof. It wasn't until two guys in the United States, Frederick Lord and William Burnham, they founded a company called Lord and Burnham Manufacturing Company in the 1800s, and they established a greenhouse construction system where they had equipment that could be used in different greenhouse frames. They were the Henry Fords of the greenhouse industry. And that company existed from 1890s to 1923. Their partnership was strong. In fact, Perk Greenhouses today is a Lord and Burnham frame built in 1949. Other greenhouses include conservatories. This is from the New York Botanic Gardens. And a lot of conservatories have curved roof. The glass isn't curved, but the frames are curved, and the greenhouse is lapped together in such a way that we can have the curved structure. We have Gothic arch greenhouses that are typical of northern climates. The Gothic arch, just think of that Goth structure. And Goth in this case refers to the greenhouse design, not the black fingernails. Another greenhouse design that we'll talk about is called the Venlo, or low profile. Venlo actually refers to the Venlo region of Holland, and they use greenhouses that have a very shallow angle on their roof pitch, where in this country we have a steeper angle, but it's done in such a way to reduce the surface area that's exposed for heating. Very common in the Netherlands. Most of the greenhouse vegetable growers use this design. We often use the word Dutch greenhouse. Other types of ridge and furrow gutters. This is a greenhouse in North Carolina where we have the standard roof pitch, which is basically 6 by 12, 6-foot rise, 12-foot run. Gutter connected greenhouses where we can have open walls in between. It reduces the surface area exposed for heating and cooling, but it allows people to move back and forth more freely than the greenhouses. One of the things that most people forget to do when they build a greenhouse is to allow for expansion. The first thing you'll note is when you build a greenhouse is it's probably too small, because you got to probably have more orders than you can fill. My wife used to work for Gully Greenhouses when they first started expanding their greenhouse facilities down at the bottom of the hill. If you've ever been to their propagation ranges, she and her boss walked in there and looked at Jim Gully and said, "It's too small." And they had to start expanding immediately. Quonset frames. Quonset frames are really cheap and easy to build. In fact, there's not a person in this room that could not erect a Quonset greenhouse by themselves. They're very easy to build. Quonset refers to Quonset, Rhode Island, which was where they had the first manufacturing plant to build and design cheap, easy to construct, fast to construct buildings for World War II. Most Quonset buildings came from the military. We use them in greenhouses because they're easy to erect and cheap and inexpensive, and it's quick and easy to throw a sheet of poly on and build yourself a greenhouse. Most greenhouses that we call high tunnels are Quonset frames. Is a high tunnel a greenhouse? Yes. Is a greenhouse a high tunnel? Yes. Typically, though, a high tunnel in this country is an unheated greenhouse. And then there's all kinds of stuff that you can find. Everything from the inflated greenhouses, which most people now use for tennis courts, to the Permaculture Center up at Vail. They promote the geodesic dome. I'm not fond of the geodesic dome because it's probably an inefficient user of space, but there are people that swear by them. Bubble greenhouses. I have colleagues that work at the University of Arizona in Tucson, which they manage a program called Controlled Environment Agriculture, and they're actively working with NASA to do a lot of work. Has anybody ever been to Epcot? Did you go to the Land Pavilion at Epcot? Okay. Would you like to do an internship at the Land Pavilion at Epcot? They have 6-month internships. I have never not been able to get one of my students there. if you want to go. Les Fry, the man that runs the internship program at the Land Pavilion at Epcot, is a CSU graduate. He loves CSU students. You don't work in the greenhouses, you're on stage. Okay. Bubble greenhouses, not too popular in snow areas, so forth. Geodesic domes, this is the Missouri Botanical Garden. It's an old slide, you can tell by the bus. But the Missouri Botanical Garden, the geodesic dome, the framework is on the outside of the greenhouse. And one of the new things, new trends in greenhouse technology is to build greenhouses vertically. In Europe, they don't have the privilege of having the open land spaces that we have in the United States. They're starting to build greenhouses up and down, especially in Sweden, where those people have been living on top of each other for thousands of years, where we're just getting started here in terms of how you can build greenhouses. So they're starting to build greenhouses vertically. And of course, controlled environment agriculture, growth chambers, and such as that. The people at Tucson, they also have an active program in Antarctica where they're growing plants at the research center at the Antarctic research stations. They're all using state-of-the-art lights and stuff like that. Okay. So that's my introduction to the greenhouse industry. One of the things I also like to talk about is flowers. This is a greenhouse management class where most of the production is flowers. And one of the things I'd like to ask you is, why do people buy flowers? How many people have bought flowers in the last month? Okay. Why did you buy your flowers? Why did you buy flowers? They changed the indoor environment. Okay. Guys, which gentleman wants to tell me why they bought flowers? You're in trouble. Okay. Go check out a website called www.bewareofthedoghouse.com. Don't let your girlfriend see it. Okay. You can if you want. Okay. You're in trouble. Okay. What else? Did you buy? We'll have class on Valentine's Day. Did you buy flowers for Valentine's Day? Did you buy flowers for Mother's Day? Okay. So most people in this country buy flowers for what reason? A gift. Okay. Most people in Europe buy flowers because they want to change their environment. Okay. One of the things that's really interesting is that most people here buy flowers for therapy, either personal therapy or as a gift, because you're in trouble or you want something. And the competition is alcohol, tobacco, and candy and stuff like that. Most of the people that buy and consume flowers are from developed countries in temperate climates like we have here. And the largest markets are Western Europe, United States and Canada, and Japan. Actually, Japan is above the United States, but when you throw Canada in there, we're above Japan. What country can you guess consumes more flowers in the world than any other country per capita? Netherlands? No. It's a good thought. France? No. Switzerland. People that buy flowers have what's called discretionary income, and those are the cultures that buy flowers. The United States, and one of the things, you'll see that some of my data is old. It's because the USDA doesn't update the data as fast as I would like, and sometimes I can't keep up as well. $19.4 billion in floral sales in this country. That comes to $55 per person. How many people have spent $55 on flowers? Okay. I have. My wife says I don't spend enough. Okay. She says, you're a florist, you're a greenhouse guy, where are my flowers? So, Most people spend their money on fresh cut flowers or bedding plants. Does that surprise you? Okay. Flowering plants, these are like poinsettias, Easter lilies. Green plants, 5%. Who has green plants at home? Foliage plants? Okay, you're plant nerds. That's not unexpected. Artificial and dried. How many people buy artificial and dried flowers? I do, because I have a cat that chews one of my plants and throws up. But the countries that spend more money per capita are the European countries: Switzerland, Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, and Germany. That's the order of how per capita spending that we have on flowering plant materials. Okay? Switzerland is one of the wealthiest countries per capita in the world. Okay? Followed by Norway and the Netherlands, of course. So these people have discretionary income, money that's not committed to food and shelter or their PlayStation. Now, up until about 45, 50 years ago, most greenhouse flower production was produced close to the consumption point. It wasn't until about 1950 that things changed. Now most of the production is in the developing world because of cheaper labor and a more ideal climate. What changed is the onset of mass transportation, the interstate system in the United States, and air transportation. We had all these people coming back from World War II, pilots, etc. New technologies in transport of fruits and vegetables and flowers allowed us to move production offshore. The birth of the greenhouse flower industry is thought to be from Holland during the 1600s. Today, when we think of blooming plants, we think of Holland. Well, it's the way there for a reason. In the 1600s, Holland was the merchant sea power. Think of the Dutch masters. Okay? They owned the boats. And Amsterdam was a leading commercial city, and they would deliver goods all around the world, and they would bring flowers home, flowers and plants home. Not necessarily Dutch nationals sponsoring the trips, but they owned the ships. And even today, 25% of the flower product in the world goes through Holland, either as in a marketing stage or in a production stage. So they would do a lot of things, including lilacs, lilac bushes, bring them into dormancy. Still the largest floral producer in the world. The United States is the second largest producer. So forth. The production areas that's in the growth mode right now is China. Okay. And together, the top four countries in the world produce 54% of the world's floral products. Includes the Netherlands, the United States, China, and Japan. So in the United States production, where do we sit today? Almost half of the production is bedding plants. No big surprise there. Bedding plants. Propagation, flowering potted plants, cut flowers is now only 10% of the production of blooming plants in the United States. Foliage, 12, and so forth. Second largest producer behind the Netherlands. Now we go back to the 19th century, everything was close by. And we used horse-drawn wagons, whatever, trucks. 1950s, most of the production moved to California and Florida because we had the beginning of the interstate system put together by Eisenhower, and later became offshore. So we look at the growth rate from 1950s to year 2000, how much it cost to ship by air freight. Not a big change. $10? You know, not too bad. This is for a box of flowers. So the United States production originally centered around eastern areas, like the biggest production area early on in the United States was Long Island. For those of you who have ever been to Long Island, if you travel out to the outskirts, the tip of Long Island, the further away you get from the city, it gets more and more and more rural. Lots of vegetable farms, peaches, cherries, apples, and greenhouses. And then it moved to the southern production, southern outdoor production, and because of the temperature, fuel costs, and we had good transportation. Eventually we had a Colorado greenhouse production, California about the same time, and then it went to foreign. So we look at wholesale production value, the top 15 states in the United States. Number 1 is California. Number 2 is Florida. Number 3 is Michigan. That's not a very southern area. But Michigan is one of the central areas of bedding plant production, specifically Kalamazoo. North Carolina, and then it drops back down to there. Why is Colorado not in this list? Well, they cut the list to 15 states. We're 16. Actually, we're above Hawaii, but Hawaii pays the government to do their evaluations, and we don't. All right, let's see if we can get this one to run.
Today, Fun with Flowers and Jay is brought to you by the California Cut Flower Commission. California flowers are America's flowers.
Welcome to the world of flowers. I'm Jay Schwanke. I've spent my entire life surrounded by flowers. As a fourth-generation florist, flowers have been a part of my daily life for as long as I can remember. Now I'm on a mission to share my knowledge and love of flowers with everyone I meet. Growing, picking, arranging, designing, and sharing. It's all fascinating to me because I love flowers. Anything flowers and everything flowers. Welcome to Fun with Flowers and Jay. Today on Fun with Flowers and Jay, we're at the Tournament of Roses parade and behind the scenes, seeing how they use the flowers of California to create these amazing floats. We're at Fiesta Floats. There are 10 or 12 huge floats being constructed right now, and we're looking in on the Kit Kat Clock Company float that's being made entirely out of California flowers. Row after row after row, thousands of roses, each one being individually vialed so it can be placed on its appropriate float, providing a water source for the entire parade route. And here we have the California-grown roses that are for the Kit Kat float that'll be placed on our beautiful California-grown float. So I'm here with Woody Young, the president of the Kit Kat Clock Company.
Yep.
And the Kit Kat clock is American made.
Absolutely, and has been from the very beginning.
And so today, we're looking at an all California grown float.
I wanted to make sure that we, since we're an American icon,
Correct.
that we had American flowers on our float.
Awesome. And so we've got bird of paradise, we've got eucalyptus, we've got bells of Ireland that have all been grown in California.
Absolutely. This did not just happen. And when we were told that the flowers were going to be coming in from foreign sources, we said, what can we do to make it American?
Wow.
They said, we don't know, we only buy foreign. Every fiber of my bone ached when I heard that it was not going to be grown here. Everything on the float has a story behind it. Just like the flowers being here in the United States, every person on the float has a story as well. We have one of the farmers who grew the flowers. He's on the float.
Mike Milano. So I am here with Mike Milano Sr. You are going to be riding on the Kit Kat float.
Yes, that's true.
Now, some of the stuff that they're using is what we have here. We've got the eucalyptus.
Yeah, we got
seeded and
two species of eucalyptus. The liatris comes from our farm, and these are bird of paradise. They come from our farm. Now, the flowers on this float are not only from our farm, they're from growers all over California. The California Cut Flower Commission has worked with Kit Kat to source the flowers so that we would have all California flowers.
And now we're 2 days into float building.
Yeah.
But this is going to get covered with roses. There's going to be more
Yeah.
gerberas, all sorts of different things. And
Yeah.
it's just amazing. So now, how many people will work on this float?
We've had quite a few hundred.
Wow.
Every shift that we have, we get about 40 people, and we
Okay.
have 2 shifts per day. So we're getting at least 80 people. Some come back that were here earlier in the week, but most of them are first timers.
And they're volunteers.
They're all volunteers.
And every inch of the float is covered with a botanical material then, correct?
Yes. And it's not dyed or processed in any way. It's its natural form.
From a floral aspect, we don't see black flowers. So what's
No.
covering the cat?
The cat is covered in onion seed.
Onion seed, which is black.
Yeah.
And is that
Naturally
what
black.
also goes along here too?
Yes, so everything that's black is onion seed.
And
Yeah.
onion seed is tiny.
It's tiny and it likes to roll off easily. So you have to put a lot of glue, and the cat itself has 2 coats.
Keep up the good work. You got a lot of work to do, so we'll let you
Yes.
get back to work.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks so much.
Bye.
A huge treat. I am here with Jim Hine. I have known you for such a long time. You were a charter member of AIFD. You are Mr. Rose Parade. This float is special for us because it's all California grown, and it's the Kit Kat float.
That's right. And this was definitely on the onset a challenge I felt, but then as working with it, it's been a real adventure doing a float that is entirely fresh cut California product.
Right.
And it has the most varieties of flowers of any float that we've done in many of years. More types of flowers. So it's been a real interesting thing.
A man who started AIFD for all of us. A man who makes magic with flowers. Why do you think flowers are so important?
All you have to do is look at somebody's face. People walk in here. We had visitors through here today. We had 1,200 people come through here earlier today on tours. To see them walk into this facility and just to look at this and see the expression, it's worth every moment of suffering. I once said at one of my programs that I was producing that, you know, I buy more roses and give to America on New Year's Day than anyone else, and it makes a lot of people happy and a lot of people filled with joy and sets it off for a new year.
You are one of the lead designers on this. You're putting the flowers into place.
Some of the arrangements, as you can see, have like thousands of placements. I mean, you'll
Yeah.
have like 300 roses, 400 birds of paradise. I mean, you know, stories away.
How do you get all that stuff into one block of foam?
Those wonderful designer blocks,
Yeah.
chicken wire, and bus tubs. And then you pray. No,
I see you go up to an arrangement that I think is done, and then you've got a
know.
whole bucket, and you're adding more.
Jim likes them lush.
Yeah, that is so awesome.
It is awesome. I mean, how many flowers you really can get in one design. But, of course, it's impact, it's groupings, because when you see them on camera, it makes such a difference. You know, you
Oh, yeah.
really viewing them, you can't do that salt and pepper look where you do onesie twosies.
Oh.
So you have to do mass groupings
Impact
of color.
of color.
That's what it's all about.
So super big treat. Modesto Busto. This is the man, the artist, that is famous for all of the faces that you see. The realism that happens. Tell me about what you do.
Well, I'm a detail artist for the company. I do around to do special effects and doing details and making the faces and bodies of the animals and people.
Now tell me about the face too, because
Okay,
there's
well,
so much detail.
Oh yeah, and then this is the angel hair
Okay.
grass, and this is crushed rice.
Oh, wow.
Here, dried artichoke thistle. And this is the natural color. This is when it's
Right,
dried.
cordoni
It's not-
puffs.
But yeah, the cordoni puffs.
When
yeah.
I was a little kid,
Yeah,
we would call
right,
them
yeah.
the cardoni puffs. The little detail
lentil.
in its eyes and everything. Modesto.
Yeah, that's
It's-
why. That's the winterberry.
Oh, okay.
To get the little winterberry. Yeah, you'll see them on
Only
the.
you would think of this. So this is a super treat. My best friend Susie Ayala. We are here. You've been working on these floats forever.
30 years now.
Yeah. And so you are chairman of Indonesia.
I'm the floral director of Indonesia, yeah.
You said there's more flower detail on this float.
There is. There's a lot of details going on a lot of the floats, and they have a lot of different types of flowers, but we have a lot of weaving going on because of the intricate weaving that they do in Indonesia, and braiding and those kind of things compared to the other floats.
How long have you been working on this thing?
The floats have been built since May. They start building them in May.
Okay.
And they work all during May, June, July. And then the flowers, the dried material starts the first week in November. And every weekend, November and December, they do dry materials. And then the fresh materials started this week, right after Christmas.
Wow. It's so funny because people have been emailing me and saying, oh, it's my bucket list. I want to go. I want to work on the rose parade.
I think every floral designer should. Every floral designer has no idea how many different types of flowers, different colors, textures. I mean, they see things in their flower shops on a regular basis, but they'll never see this many flowers.
So I'm here with Paulina Trujillo, and you are the deco chair for the Cal Poly float.
For the flow side, yes.
Okay, San Luis Obispo.
San Luis Obispo.
And you can watch more of that on your own. So I showed that just primarily to kind of just to give you an introduction to the diversity of flowers and some of the crazy ways that flowers are used. I don't know if you know the guidelines for the Rose Bowl Parade, that every float, it has to be completely made of natural material. And most of it is made with roses. There are no crepe paper stuck in chicken wire. I need to talk a little bit about the Colorado carnation industry. Why did Colorado have such a strong carnation industry? Up until the 1980s into the 90s, Colorado was the central hub of carnation production of the world. After the carnation production started to dwindle, going into roses, and now we have a lot of plug production. So what about carnations? What about Colorado? Well, a couple of things go back to the turn from the 1900s from the 19th century to the 20th century. A company called Park Elitch. Park Elitch was one of the first garden centers and floral shops. We know Elitch's today as a theme park. Okay, Elitch Gardens today still grows their own flowers. And there's a couple of soda shops inside Elitch Gardens that have some photographs that have a really interesting history of Elitch Gardens. It started out as a florist and these sorts of things, and grew into a garden center, and eventually got to be friends with some circus companies. They started keeping circus animals, babies primarily, established a petting zoo, and it grew into the theme park we have today. Another person that was responsible for promoting carnations was this woman here. Anybody know who that is? That's Maddie Silks. Do you know that name? Kind of a underlying person in the Denver area, especially down in Lodo, in that she ran a home for wayward women. And she always made sure that there were lots of carnations in her house. In fact, they even had underground tunnels from the Brown Palace so the gentleman couldn't be seen going to Maddie Silk's place. Anyway, but she was one of the promoters of early carnation industry. These two men, John Valentine was a florist in the Canyon City area. He died in a car accident between Canyon City and Denver. And John Valentine is one of the founding members of an organization called FTD, Florist Trans World Delivery. And the idea was that anybody, anywhere in the world can order flowers, then through a telegraph, then into a telephone, now through the computer, called wire service. And he created the concept. He was a Colorado florist. And he coined the phrase that ATD uses today, which is, can anybody say it? Say it with flowers. Have you heard that before? Some of you aren't old enough. But that was attributed to him. Walter Lear, Lear's Florists, still a major It's not owned by the Lair family anymore, but is owned by their descendants, Lair's Florist. He was one of the early creators. Homer Pearson was a carnation grower in the 30s and 40s, and he came to CSU, then Colorado A&M Colorado A&M College, requesting to have what's called a field man, and then President Laurie told him to go away. He didn't want to talk to him, didn't understand the politics. Kind of annoyed Mr. Pearson so much that he became a senator and eventually lieutenant governor of the state of Colorado, and came to CSU and said, you will have an extension person that does greenhouse technology. And I currently sit in that position. Of course, we have university research in Colorado. It's been really strong. The Colorado carnation industry was strong because we had cool nights, lots of sun, and an investment from the university and the state. This is a picture of Bob Holly working with carnation growers, and of course a lot of pesticide research and such as that. Bob Holly put together a lot of extension programs and plans and stuff like that. The Colorado Society of America was hosted in the Denver area. These gentlemen were some of the early carnation growers. Davis Brothers Florists created the tentings of carnations, where we get flower dyes now. Those flower dyes now are owned by a company called Design Master, based in Boulder, and are marketed through a company then called Van Waters and Rogers, which is now VWR Scientific. And the Cook Brothers, K-O-C-H, they run a farm outside of Bennett where they currently are still manufacturing the dyes sold through Van Waters and Rogers, eventually going into Design Master, which creates the floral sprays. The other thing that Colorado carnation growers did is they put together what's called a marketing order. Marketing orders, you're familiar with them, whether you know it or not. For instance, there's a phrase called "got milk." And what's the phrase "got milk"? What is it? What is the first thing you think of? Little lipstick, a little white thing on your lip. Okay, that's actually cream. It's not milk. It's like some kind of a white lotion. But what that means is that for every couple of pennies out of every bunch of carnations, just like with milk, goes into a marketing campaign. And these are photographs, or these are put together that were published in magazines such as Red Book. Anybody remember Red Book? Okay, some of you do. You may be sitting in your grandmother's boxes somewhere. They had marketing campaigns where promoting Colorado carnations, and of course we have this icon here. The industry in Colorado migrated from cut flowers to potted materials to plugs and bedding plants. When I started here at CSU in 1994, we still had 13 to almost 20 million square feet of roses. Today we have maybe 1,000. So the cut flower industry has gained. CSU works with a lot of trialing. Of course, most of you are familiar with Dr. Klett's trial. Is probably the finest annual trial in the country, so forth. But what happened to our industry? It was offshore production. Right now, most of the cut flowers that come in the United States come out of Colombia. Why Colombia? Well, the Savannah of Colombia, or Savannah of Bogota, is at 9,000 feet above sea level. Cool evenings, lots of sunlight, so forth. And if you look at the production of carnations dwindled and the imports skyrocketed, and of course Delta. So what the offshore production did was pretty much devastated the cut flower industry. Those companies that are surviving today, like the Tagawa family and other families, they diversified to make sure their business stayed. Other things that happened in the 1970s, we had the first Arab oil embargo, and you saw the first drop in production when oil prices went sky high. And of course, roses did the same thing. By the mid-1980s, the end of the recession, the Dutch markets kicked into gear, and we also had cut flowers move into the supermarkets. We moved cut flowers into the supermarkets, what it started to drive what we call impulse buying. Most cut flowers now today are sold through the supermarket. An impulse buy means that you're going to walk in the store and say, oh, I want some flowers for my table. And they're inexpensive. A lot of those bunches are actually packed at the farm in Colombia. So we went from the flower shops to the grocery stores and into supermarkets. Foliage industry, most of the production, it got saturated in the late 1970s. When I was in college, everybody had green plants, lots and lots of green plants. It's not so much today. Most of the green plant production is from Florida, California, and Texas. Why? Because they can grow outside and it's cheap to ship them. Other flowering pot production, African violets, azaleas, begonias, poinsettia. Poinsettia is the #1 selling pot plant by count. The #1 selling pot plant by value is an orchid. The bedding plant industry is the growth of our industry because lots of people are now wanting to beautify their homes, and it's a cheap and inexpensive way to do it. It's fairly recession resistant. These are two major recessions, one in the early 1980s and one in the 1990s. You see a little dip in production, but it tends to be recession resistant in that people are willing to spend money on bedding plants even in years when they'd rather not spend money on a ski trip or that new power boat. So people are always willing to spend a little bit of money on their color. This is a graph that just shows, again, shipping, how things dwindle with the onset of imports for mums, carnations, and roses, which is a little bit skewed to the right. The rose breeding work has been done, it's been highlighted in such a way to improve the shippability, how well a rose ships in a box. And this graph, what this graph shows you basically is the orange. You can see how it went from 1980, it was only 20% of the market, bedding plants went to most of the market. Why? You can't bring in potting soil with a plant growing in it into the United States because of disease quarantines to protect agriculture, quarantine 37. So we can ship cut material that's been snipped off from the roots, but we can't ship something that's growing in soil because the customs agent can't see if there's a disease in the soil or not. So that's why the bedding plant industry has changed over the years. This is just some production data that I put together. All of this is covered in handouts that you can read on the website, where the production value, here you can see United States, Japan, Netherlands. Growth areas we're seeing other than China, China and Asia include Kenya, Central Africa, Central Eastern Africa, and so forth. And the last thing I'll show you is just a little quick video on greenhouse tomatoes in Canada.